What's up, guys? Welcome to our NHL Top 50 video, where we've both created lists of who we feel are the top 50 players in the NHL heading into the 2021-2022 season. Now, this video is going to be more debate on where guys are placed in our top 50 as opposed to individual analysis of players. If you want individual analysis of players, make sure to go check out our positional ranking videos where we have goalies, defensemen, and forwards all out now on our channel. So go check those out for individual analysis on players. This one's going to be more debate on where they are placed in our top 50. So without further ado, buckle up for this one here. Let's get into it.
Yes, it's going to be a long one, but let's kick it off with 50. This guy made my honorable mentions. Outside of that, everybody else you'll get analysis on in our 3 individual videos for forwards, defensemen, and goalies. Alex DeBrincat, who was my 31st forward, cracks 50 for me. He was so explosive offensively, and you can really see what he can do as a goal scorer, even as a playmaker, as a fantastic second option to Patrick Kane, which you never thought you would see since Panarin left. What brings him down is this is his first explosive season, and he's an offensive player. There isn't much to expect defensively. So where he would need to rise is consistency. Who do you have at 50?
At 50, he also fell in my honorable mentions for top 30 forwards. Again, go check out those positional videos. So at 50, it's Onsi Kopitar. Again, I think that he is towards the back end of his prime right now. He is exiting his prime. But Kopitar is a guy that certainly has a great two-way game. Certainly his numbers have been affected by the poor play of LA. I think his game only stands to get better now that LA is starting to come out of that and they've added guys like Philippe Deneau, which will help take defensive pressure off of him. So, and they've got good young scorers coming in too.
That he can either pass to or they can pass to him.
Exactly. And I think he's a guy that could rise on our list again within the next 2-3 years as LA looks to make playoff pushes again.
So at 49, I have Jacob Chychrun, who's really taken over that defensive load in Arizona. He essentially pushed Oliver Ekman-Larsson out of a job by being that good. They were not only able to trade him, but it kind of led to his decline. So because they were relying on Chychrun so much, he's good on both ends of the ice, and he'll continue to improve, especially as Arizona relies on him more, and you'll start seeing more offensive output, which will make him, in my opinion, rise. Who do you have at 49?
At 49, I have Nick Baxtrom. I think Baxtrom just, again, like we've said before, he is kind of a glue guy, but he's more skilled than your typical glue guy. Very consistent, really makes the guys around him better, and has done that for his entire career. Underrated defensively. That's why I have him at 49. Who do you have at 48?
I have Mark Scheifele, who's been a great two-way forward, more known for his offensive game. He's been so consistent and so stable for Winnipeg. Where I would want to see, or what I need to see out of him for a higher ranking where he should be, is probably deeper playoff runs, because Winnipeg's so deep. And now that they have a D-core, to me, it's cup or bust. Who do you have at 48? At
48, I have Matthew Kachuk. Matthew Kachuk has really developed a grittier game. He's almost a poor man's Brad Marchand in some ways. He kind of has that pest factor to him. Again, you love when he's your teammate, hate when he's your opponent. And overall, he has the offensive numbers to really sustain the fact that, he does play well on both sides of the ice, but offensively, he does have the numbers to be in a top 50 list like this, and will be a huge part for Calgary moving forward.
And 47 is where I have Nick Baxtrom for all the reasons you mentioned it, so I won't get too much into it. Who do you have at 47?
At 47, I have Aaron Ekblad. Again, he's a staple on this Florida blue line here. Obviously, injuries have taken a toll on him before, but I think Florida needs consistency on that. They've got the forward depth. They just need consistency on defense, and he provides that. Has really been a mainstay there, and is a huge part of what they have going on in Florida.
At 46, I have Mark Stone, who is arguably the best two-way winger in the NHL. Defensively, I feel he could be more complete.
Yeah.
But he's generational when it comes to takeaways. And offensively, he's consistent. You can expect 60-point pace seasons for him.
Yeah.
And he just makes any team he's on better, whether it's Ottawa, whether it's Vegas. Who do you have at 46?
At 46, I have Zach Rorinsky.
Okay.
I think he's been one of the better goal-scoring defensemen in the NHL over the past couple seasons here. We'll definitely see if he's worth that huge contract extension that he got.
Yeah.
But he has been a staple on Columbus's blue line, especially offensively. You'd like to see him develop a bit more of a defensive game in order for him to surge up this list because he has that potential offensively.
He has the potential. With that contract, you want more defense. And with the loss of Seth Jones, with him being your bona fide number one, any number one D-man has to be good on both ends of the ice. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. At 45, this is where I have Miro Heiskanen, who in my opinion is the most explosive D-man. If not, he's top 3 with guys we're going to have higher. He's so quick. He's so sound on both ends of the ice. It's his offense that's going to continue to improve and help him to rise up this list. Who do you have at 45?
At 45, I have Jake Guenzel. And I think Jake Guenzel is a guy that certainly has benefited in his career from playing alongside Crosby, Malkin. But at the same time, I think he has the skill to really push those numbers even further. Obviously, they've been boosted, but he is a skilled enough player
to get the job done.
Done on both ends of the ice, too.
Yep. At 44, this is where I have Connor Hellebuyck.
Okay.
Who I feel is one of those elite goalies. It's hard for a goalie to crack this list because they're so dependent on defense. And that's on both ends. Like, they need good defensive forwards, good defensive D-men, and a defensive sound game to get the numbers they get. But with or without, Hellebuyck's going to produce. It's a matter of whether or not he's overworked. Having Brossoit as backup this past season really helped him out, and going into this season where there's uncertainty, it's either going to be really good or really bad for him. But either way, I feel he's an elite goaltender.
For sure.
Who do you have at 44?
At 44, I have Johnny Guudreau. And there may be a lot of skepticism around Goudreau and whether he can take Calgary where they need to go.
Simply because he's one-dimensional.
Yeah, but the one dimension he does have is fantastic. He's one of the higher scorers in the league within the past 3 seasons. So I really think that Johnny Goudreau, his offensive game is what pushes him into the top 50 and why he is one of the most lethal offensive players in the league.
Yep. At 43, I have Evgeny Malkin, who is still fantastic. It's injuries that drop him. But he's still so good and dynamic offensively. He makes the players around him better. I mean, he turned Brian Rust into a superstar. No disrespect to Brian Rust, but to turn a guy like that, a hardworking player, into a first liner, it takes a special talent. And Evgeny Malkin is that guy. Who do you have at 43?
At 43, I have Drew Dowdy.
Okay.
And Drew Dowdy has been consistent his entire career. Obviously, his numbers have been brought down with the poor play from LA of recent. But Dowdy's a guy that he's consistently in the lineup, consistently a presence for them. Offensively, he's one of the better offensive defensemen in terms of point scoring, a good playmaking defenseman. So, I consider him definitely deserving of a top 50 spot. And I think with LA getting better, it'll only help his game more.
Yeah, so I kind of let you slide with Aaron Ekblad, who I felt you had low, but I really think Drew Dowdy's low on your list. For me, 10 spots too low because he's so sound defensively. He's so sound offensively. He gets the job done on both ends. His offensive numbers were up because he had the opportunity to do so, and he eats minutes. You put him on a good team, he's going to carry that team. Like LA, that's no fault to Kopitar, no fault to Dowdy, because it's 2 players on an 18-man roster. It's tough to get the job done, and he's really been the only stable defenseman in LA in the past few seasons.
Oh, for sure.
So that's why I have him a lot higher, because I just think he's fantastic and so dynamic on both ends of the ice.
I just think at some point you do have to take in the LA factor too. It hasn't helped his game. It may not have hurt his game, but it certainly hasn't helped his game. So I just think other guys have gotten a lot better over the years in terms of defensemen. So
for me, I just can't imagine 42 players better than Drew Dowdy in the NHL, at least as of now. Anyways, at 42, I have Dougie Hamilton, who in New Jersey, I mentioned it before, this is going to be his first season without a good decor or without a good pairing.
Yeah.
He had Mark Giordano in Calgary. In Boston, he wasn't really relied upon, but there was still Chara, there was still Krug, and that Boston defense.
Yeah.
Now he has PK Subban, who may be his best partner in terms of defense, but New Jersey runs a very offensive-minded back end. So we're going to see how it all works out, and if he can continue to put up offensive numbers and be a two-way defenseman, a sound guy on both ends of the ice, I think he'll rise. But I have to hold him back for now because we haven't seen what he's able to do on his own.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 42?
At 42, I have Jeff Petrie, and I think Jeff Petrie has been one of the most lethal scoring defensemen in the NHL, and I think that's of value. I think he's been consistently in the lineup and was a huge part of that cup run with Montreal this year, and you saw the games that he missed in that cup run, how much they did miss him on the blue line there. It'll be interesting to see how his game develops now that Shea Weber isn't there on the defensive end, and if he kind of has to pick up some of the pieces there. But overall, there are very few better offensive defensemen than Jeff Petrie.
And I left him off my list, but I'm not mad about that pick because you mentioned his offense. He's a defensive D-man.
Yeah.
Where I leave him off is the same reason why I have Dougie Hamilton so low, is he hasn't had to do it on his own yet.
Yeah.
Now in Montreal, he's that number one guy. So this is where he's either going to rise. For you, rise up your list. For me, rise onto my list. But he can also fall given that opportunity.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good pick. At 41, I have Jacob Slavin, who I feel is the best defensive D-man in the league.
100%.
And he still has offense.
Yeah.
It's just incredible to watch a guy lead a blue line without having to put up ridiculous offensive numbers. And that's what you get in Jacob Slavin. He's really that catalyst in Carolina. He's that guy that developed that culture of playing sound on both ends of the ice, relying on all lines to fire. He's the guy that kind of gets that job done. In Carolina, I think he's their most important player. Who do you have at 41?
And just in terms of, you mentioned it with Dowdy, I think I'm going to mention it with Slavin here. I think that's a little low for him just because his defense is so top-notch.
Yeah.
And when you are at your position, the best in that category, I think he's not too much lower on my list, but I certainly think he deserves to crack at least the top 40.
Okay.
So I would argue that he's a little lower in that case just because his defense is so good. And like you said, the offense still is there.
Yep.
So at 41, I have Morgan Reilly. I think Morgan Reilly has been the mainstay on that Toronto Maple Leafs blue line. I think now that he has a lot of guys taking the load of that he had as the lead defenseman there, when you bring in guys like Jake Muzzin, that can certainly both help his game and take away from his game. The one thing that I mentioned before in our top 20 defenseman video is that I don't think Morgan Reilly never hurts your team, but I don't think he's necessarily helped them get across that hump and get across the line of making it out of a playoff round that a lot of people would have expected him to get.
Yeah,
and that's not a knock against him. I just think that there's a lot of other factors that they need to get past that, and I don't think that I think that there are other guys that could get him past.
Riley's talent doesn't scare me like it does. I haven't mentioned him yet, but I have a lot of guys higher than him.
Yeah.
And his talent doesn't scare me more than the guys I have above him.
Yeah.
In the context of when those guys are on the ice, I'm afraid something against my team is going to happen that I don't want to happen.
Yeah.
Whether it's a goal, whether it's a zone exit, whether it's a big hit. Reilly just doesn't do that as well as guys both of us have higher.
Yeah.
At 40, I have Sean Couturier.
Okay.
Who I feel is pushing to be the best two-way forward in the NHL.
Yeah.
So for me, this seems low because you've seen how he's taken over that role from guys like Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek offensively while being a great two-way forward.
Yeah.
I think although he's in his prime, I think he has that potential to rise because defensive forwards tend to get better with age. Yeah. And he's that guy. Who do you have at 40?
At 40, I have Alex Ovechkin. And I think his game has become a lot more one-dimensional than it's ever been. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he's the greatest goal scorer of our generation. I think defensively, he's not really going to play defensively. He is a physical player, but I do anticipate his physicality is probably going to drop as he gets older. Mm-hmm. Again, very one-dimensional. Does that dimension very well, though, in goal scoring. So that's why I have him at 40.
For me, Ovi, one thing I didn't mention in the forwards list is when I was looking at guys, I had my honorable mentions. Those were some of the, and those are obviously guys that are lower. Anybody on this list, I feel like at points can be better than Ovechkin. Mm-hmm. All that to say is you could have him as high as pushing the top 10. Yeah. You can have him off the list because it just depends on what you value in a player.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on to pick number 39. This is where I have Shay Theodore.
Okay.
I have Shay Theodore a little lower because I feel like a lot of his help comes from Alex Pietrangelo. Mm-hmm. But that's no knock on Shay Theodore. I think he's a great two-way forward. He really stepped it up offensively, but I don't think that happens without Pietrangelo.
Yeah.
And that kind of implies, for me at least, that he can't run a deep and cup contending blue line on his own.
Yeah.
Despite in his first season going to the finals. That was just a special run.
Yeah.
Not to diminish anything there, but whether or not they get back, I think Theodore has to be the guy to take it up to the next level.
Yep.
One of the guys in Vegas. Anyways, who do you have at 39?
At 39, this is where I have Connor Hellebuyck. I think he's been consistent. He's been consistently elite. So certainly a guy that is deserving of being within the top 40. Arguably the biggest reason why Winnipeg is a contender year in and year out. Mm-hmm. There's not a whole lot to say. Hellebuyck's consistency is what puts him at 39 for me.
Yep. And Morgan Reilly is who I have at 38. And This is the last guy I'll mention that I would have argued Slavin over. The reason I don't is because both Theodore and Reilly are more explosive. Mm-hmm. And on the blue line, when you're building around a blue line, it seems like you need that talent.
Yeah.
With the loss of Dougie Hamilton, Carolina is going to need to replace that offense. And generally, you want your number one D-man on that first power play, which is a thing Shay Theodore and Morgan Reilly can do, which I'm not sure Slavin can. If he does, and he does it well, he's going to skyrocket. But up until now, I have more faith in the two-way game, mainly offensively, of Morgan Reilly and Shay Theodore. I won't go any further into it. Who do you have at 38?
38, I have Steven Stamkos.
Okay.
And like I said in our forwards video, I think he drops down. Obviously, skill-wise, he can skyrocket up this list, and he has in the past, but it's injuries. It's the fact that he hasn't been able to string together consistent, healthy seasons to really go any higher on this list. But skill, if this was just raw skill, he'd definitely be higher. But in terms of best right now, just because of the injuries, he's 38 for me.
Fair enough. At 37, I have Maddie Barzell, who I feel is another guy that can skyrocket, but his offense is limited in that Barry Trotz system.
Yep.
For him to go up, I guess he has to produce more offensively.
Yeah.
But the one benefit is he's been developed into a great two-way forward, that Sean Couturier type. He may be able, because he's so young, to step into the Kopitar Bergeron echelon of elite, if not generational, two-way forwards. Yep. It really depends on the trajectory his career goes, but offensively, you can depend on this guy. It's a matter of whether or not Barry Trotz wants that in his team or wants to rely on Barzell for that production. Who do you have at 37?
At 37, I have Mark Stone.
Yep.
As you talked about with Barzell, kind of getting to that generational two-way game. I think Stone is one of those guys that we consider in generational two-way talents. Obviously, his defense might be slightly overrated. Great takeaway, but in terms of defensive positioning and stuff like that, could be better. But the fact he's doing it as a winger, like you mentioned before, is a big deal, as you normally see this in centers. And yeah, his offensive numbers with how good he is on defense, it does not take away from his offense. Still one of the mainstays in that.
And that's what makes him so elite, because he's putting out production, let's just say like Philippe Danault.
Yeah.
But he's still putting up 60 points, whereas Danault may get 6 goals.
Yeah.
So that's what makes him such a special player. So at 36, I have a guy who I feel can and should skyrocket up this list in Mika Zibanejad. Definitely a down year because he was out with COVID. He wasn't himself for sure, but you saw a glimpse of him getting back to that 40-goal pace nearing the end of the season. If he does it and if he continues to improve, he's going to be a force. Again, this is a guy that can pot 40 goals along with playing a great defensive game. So to me, this is low to have him. And just in terms of production, this is why I don't have him higher than other guys.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 36?
At 36, this is where I have Jacob Slavin.
Okay.
And again, he is in my opinion, he is the best defensive defenseman in this game. And in terms of offense, again, his offense hasn't been sacrificed. He is still a solid offensive defenseman. I'm curious to see how he does now that Dougie Hamilton isn't leading the way in terms of the offensive load on defense. So it'll be interesting to see if he can kind of take over a bit of that. Obviously, he's not going to be the offensive player that Hamilton is, but if he can take on a little bit more and develop more of a two-way game, I think he has the potential to skyrocket up this list.
So one thing I forgot to mention that makes me nervous with Slavin is him and Pesce, I don't think should be on the same line. I think they should split them, and let's say you put Ethan Bear or
Tony DeAngelo
up with Slavin.
Yeah.
And then whoever beside Pesce, just so you can split the defensive and offensive load. If that works, then you don't need to rely on Slavin for offense.
No.
And he can continue to play that defensive shutdown sound game.
Yeah.
We'll see what they do, though. Either way, at the very least, he's above average offensively, which is more than you can ask from a number one who's so good defensively. 35, I have the explosive Aaron Ekblad, who's really stepped it up offensively, along with playing big minutes. It's the emergence of Mackenzie Weegar that skyrockets Ekblad because he finally has found his partner that works and helps him excel his game. And if they continue to work, I think he'll continue to climb this list.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 35?
35, I have Darnell Nurse. Again, self-explanatory, good on both ends of the ice, very consistent offensively, really just takes on a lot of the workload there, just very durable. And yeah, his time on ice was ridiculous in that one game in the playoffs. He was playing over 40 minutes in one of their
broke records.
Big overtime games. So I think Darnell Nurse is certainly worthy of being in this top 40 and will only continue to rise on this list.
And for him to rise, he has to continue this play. He doesn't necessarily even need to get better.
Yeah.
I just want to see this kind of consistency because to me, this is the first signs we've seen of an elite defender in Darnell Nurse. At 34, I have Carrie Price, who you can argue shouldn't be on the list. You can argue higher. Regular season most certainly should not be on this list. Playoff Carrie Price is arguably top 10.
Yeah.
Because he's so talented. He's so sound. He makes saves that no one should do. He gets his teams in positions. Like Montreal had no business being in the Cup Finals.
No.
Of course, they were a great team and things clicked. But it doesn't work without Carey Price. The amount of 2-on-1s, 2-on-0s, and 1-on-0s you see in Montreal, although you know them as a defensive team, it shouldn't work. But because he's so talented, he makes it work in Montreal. Who do you have at 34?
At 34, I have Charlie McAvoy, and he really has been the stable defenseman that Boston has been looking for, and he really grew into that this year. As there was a lot of talk of who was really going to lead that blue line after Chara left. Obviously, Chara was in his decline.
And offensively after Torrey Krug left.
Exactly. And he really took on both of those roles very well this season. As again, they were neck and neck with the Islanders. And really either of them could have gone to the conference finals this year, but Charlie McAvoy is going to be that guy leading them on the blue line for years to come. And like Darnell Nurse and Jacob Slavin, he will only rise if he continues to put up seasons like this.
So at 33, I have Ryan O'Reilly, who I feel is up there in terms of defensive forwards leading the way. I can't quite say he's the best, but he's definitely up in that echelon. But as great as he is defensively, I would say he's fringe elite offensively. At the very least, he's consistent. He's the best player on a St. Louis team that's had Pietrangelo and is very deep even now after that, after the Pietrangelo left. And I don't know if there's more out of him that they can get so they can be back competing for a cup. But even what he offers now, I feel like is great hockey all around. Who do you have at 33?
At 33, I have Miko Rantanin.
Yeah.
And I think Miko Rantanin is a guy that, I mean, all of them have benefited from playing together, but he certainly has benefited from playing with the likes of Gabriel Landeskog and Nathan MacKinnon. And I think what puts him a little lower than he probably is on your list and on a lot of lists is I just think, because we mentioned it before in the forwards video, that because Colorado's offense relies upon them so much, that he has faced a fair amount of injury over the past 3 seasons. And I think that's one of the things that drops him down for me. If they bring in more help on the lower lines, definitely will help his longevity, the longevity of his career, and keeping him in the lineup more consistently. But certainly he has the skill to, again, skyrocket up this list.
At 32, I have Drew Dowdy. And you have him a little lower, as I mentioned before, because I feel he's so talented and so sound. I've really already mentioned all the reasons I have him as high as I do, so I won't go too far into it. Who do you have at 32?
32, I have Kyle Connor, and I think in a very deep Winnipeg forward core, I think he almost gets lost when talking about other guys like Scheifele, like Blake Wheeler. But I think Kyle Connor is arguably a lot better. I don't necessarily think he's the fourth option. I know you mentioned that he was the fourth option in our forward.
I would say he's
there.
arguably. I would say he's 3, but with the emergence of Nick Ehlers, and Connor seeing.
Oh, for sure.
But Blake Wheeler's on a decline. Just to clear that up.
But Kyle Connor has had a 40-goal season.
Yes.
He is one of the deadliest goal scorers in the NHL right now. And he has a
great two-way game.
And he's got a great two-way game, so that's why I consider him so highly.
And again, the only reason I don't have him on these lists is because he's arguably a 3rd and 4th option. But as he grows into what you would think to be the 2nd option, I think he's going to skyrocket. At 31, this is where I have Darnell Nurse for all the reasons you mentioned, and what he needs to go higher. Again, it's just consistency at this point, because there's not much more you can ask of him. Maybe offense, but he needs his team to help him get out of the D zone to do so. But defensively, he didn't make a mistake. And I don't know what more you can ask for. Who do you have at 31?
At 31, I have John Tavares. And I think John Tavares has just been wildly consistent. Obviously, he is in a little bit of a decline considering that Marner is playing with Matthews now. He does kind of fall down their priority chart in terms of forwards when it comes to creating offense. But, I mean, up until this point, he's been wildly consistent. Toronto's only helped his career and has only helped his numbers. That didn't necessarily need helping when moving from New York. So, I think John Tavares is still worthy of just being, I don't think he's a top 30, but just being outside of a top 30 overall NHL player right now.
Okay. At 30, this is where I have Chris Letang. This one was tough for me to rank because offensively he's so dynamic. But it's kind of his job to be an offensive D-man, because it's not that he doesn't offer much on the blue line or defensively, but he's not relied upon in Pittsburgh to play much defense. That's more on Brian Dumoulin, and that's why they are able to win a cup without him, because offense you can replace, but defensive soundness you can't. And because Chris Letang doesn't provide that at an elite level, I have him low. Who do you have at 30?
At 30, I have Mika Zibanejad.
Okay.
And he's a guy that you said, like, you had lower, but you said he certainly has the potential to skyrocket.
And should.
And I think he can certainly rise above 30th in this case here. One of those guys that certainly certainly plays well both ends. Certainly is an all-around team player here, and just a wildly successful on the offensive end. So that's why I have him in my top 30.
Yep, at 29, I have Miko Rantanin.
Okay.
Similar as what you're saying.
Yeah.
He helps out McKinnon. McKinnon helps him out. For him to improve, you want to see health, but that's more of a thing for Colorado to do in terms of their players stepping up. So I won't go too far into that. Who do you have at 29?
At 29, I have Ryan O'Reilly, one of the more elite two-way forwards. Definitely more emphasis on the defense with him, but again, his offensive numbers haven't struggled. Really a mainstay in that St. Louis lineup.
Yep, at 28, this is where I have OV. Like I said earlier, you can argue him off this list. You can argue him higher on the list.
Yep.
Because he's so deadly at scoring goals. Scoring goals in the NHL is the hardest thing to do.
For sure.
And it's also the most important thing to do.
Yep.
Ovi does that at a great clip, although he's so old. I think we've seen signs of his decline, and it could further.
Yeah.
And where I'm starting to be a little cautious of Washington is it seems like they're focused on getting him those records.
Yeah.
It takes away from their team play. I've seen them lose games trying to pass over the puck to get him a goal. So as a team, it's not clicking like it should. But if they can go back to that Washington game where everybody's contributing and everybody's working hard, I think that's where Ovi's going to rise potentially and get back to those higher spots because he still has the talent. He has the physicality. If he can focus a little more on defense, I think it's all there. It's just a matter of whether or not Washington's able to focus.
Yeah.
And Ovi's able to focus. Who do you have at 28?
At 28, I have Dougie Hamilton.
Okay.
And I think, again, Dougie Hamilton has the potential to move above some of the defensemen on this list and to move up this top 30 list.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see what he does now that he doesn't have the safety net of Carolina's defensive core, like you mentioned. So certainly this is probably a little bit of a generous spot for him. He can, again, you argued him lower. But
it's definitely not, like, for me, there's no question here as to why you have him this high.
I don't think it's too high, but I think it's just a little
talented.
bit generous. Yeah.
He's
a
very
talented player.
It's just a matter of whether or not he does it again, because with the support, he's been consistent.
Yeah.
All I'm going to say is he's prone to dropping.
Yeah, for sure.
By no means are you wrong, or is that questionable to me. At 27, I have Sebastian Ajo, who is a great scorer, but he's so good on both ends of the ice. And I don't know what more you can ask of from a guy who was drafted in the second round as a left winger, who's now playing your first line center spot, who I think the team's built around.
Yep.
And though Jake Slavin may be the most valuable, Ajo is easily, in my opinion, the most talented because he has defensive talent. He has scoring talent, which is above Svechnikov, who is supposed to just be that offensive dynamo. So we'll see how things play out as this Carolina team continues to develop, if it remains Ajo's team. But as long as it does, he's going to be on this list and he's going to continue to grow on this list. Who do you have at 27?
At 27, I have Shay Theodore.
Yeah.
Again, his game has been accelerated since the arrival of Pietrangelo, and he was already a good defenseman to begin with. So
there were signs that a Norris D-man before Pietrangelo got there,
and Pietrangelo's only helped that, and I think they complement each other well. So there's not a whole lot of reason more why I should explain him at 27. I think he definitely is a top 30 player in the NHL.
At 26, I have Elias Pettersson, who was another guy hurt by injuries, but unlike Zibanejad, who I have lower for now, Pettersson got back into form. At the end of the season, he started putting up numbers. His defensive game was back, which people seem to forget because he's sound on both ends of the ice, but he's explosive offensively. And like I said in the forwards video, since his rookie season, he's been in this range because he made an instant impact coming into the NHL. I don't know if he'll grow. I don't know if we've already seen the best of him. But even if this is his best, he's a phenomenal player. Who do you have at 26?
At 26, I have Sebastian Ajo, and you had him just a spot lower. Really nailed it with your explanation. So, again, one of those big team player guys that does everything well. and they're building around him. So
at 25, this is where I have a guy who I feel can rise in Jack Eichel. It's injuries and Buffalo. Yeah, you don't know what you're getting when he comes back. I said it before. I feel he could be the third best center in the NHL. It's a matter of the right system, the right team, and health. Even before this injury, he's never been known to play full seasons, whether it's 60, 70 games out of 82. It just doesn't seem to work, but he's also had an insane workload.
Yeah.
Where he should be higher, I'll admit, is he's been phenomenal when healthy. But once the injury started affecting him, his games plummeted. So why I have him low is I have no idea what we're getting when he gets back into the league. Who do you have at 25?
At 25, I have Mark Scheifele, and I know you have him significantly lower. But I think Mark Scheifele, again, his game is more of a focus on offense than it is his defense. But again, he does both very well.
Yeah.
Certainly the centerpiece of their forward core there. Really play makes well. He's really an intelligent player.
Yep.
Certainly worthy of being in this top half of the top 50.
I remember when we used to do this. I remember you had him in the top 10 before.
I did.
And like, I'm not like, that's not even a roast, but Scheifele is just such a good, consistent player.
Yeah.
I hope he makes me eat my words having him so low, because I think he has that potential. I don't know what more you'd want to see out of him besides what I mentioned in the forward video or even this video is I just want to see deeper playoff runs and hopefully a cup, because they're that good for him to rise on my list. Anyways, at 24, I have Mitch Marner, who's just so explosive offensively, a great playmaker, one of the best, plays well on the penalty kill most of the time. And that's why I have him at 24. Who do you have at 24?
24, I have Alexander Barkov. Again, he's a guy that has been, I think his game has been slightly diminished by the rise of guys like Huberdeau.
He's been less relied upon. Like, he was a guy that you would see putting up 22, 24 minutes a night because there's no one else in Florida to do it. Yeah. Now they have those guys, and now they're going to have that success with guys like Huberdeau, guys like Duclair and Bennett who can score and help take the strain off him there.
Yep.
At 23, I have Steven Stamkos. You already mentioned him, and you had him drop because of injuries.
Yeah.
But I have him this high because of that talent you mentioned. He's just so explosive.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 23?
At 23, I have Alex Pietrangelo, and we talked about it when talking about Shay Theodore. He's certainly raised Shay Theodore's game.
Yep.
And is certainly a top-end elite blue liner that does have a cup, and he is a guy that is very capable of leading a cup-winning blue line.
Yeah.
And his game speaks for itself. Very good on both sides of the puck.
Definitely. At 22, I have Bergeron.
Okay.
Who talent-wise should be a lot higher. But what makes me nervous is Boston gets it done without him. He gets injured every season, plays about 60, 70 games every season. But Krejci, you've seen step up into that role, and Boston doesn't miss a beat. So despite his talent, that's where I have him a little lower, because he just doesn't seem to be that value. But come playoff time, they don't get the job done without him. He's just so good. He's generational defensively, and offensively, he definitely helps and is helped playing alongside Pasternak and Marchand. Who do you have at 22?
At 22, I have Roman Yossi. And Roman Yossi is one of the best offensive defensemen there in terms of points put up. Puts up a lot of points, and he is near the top of my defensive list here. When it comes down to it, when you move towards the top 20, there's a lot of forwards in my top 20, so that's why you're going to see a lot of defensemen kind of slide down.
Yes.
This list compared to where they are positionally.
Yep.
But yeah, Roman Yossi certainly in the upper half of this top 50, certainly deserving of that, really leading that Nashville blue line. That's an interesting blue line. There's not a whole lot of blue lines like Nashville's.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly has filled the role when Shea Weber left, certainly filled that role very well of taking charge of that blue line.
Yeah. I won't say much now because I have him quite a bit higher. Yeah. I just want to see who you have ahead of him. Anyways, at 21, I have Onsi Kopitar.
Okay.
Who I just have above Bergeron because he does what he does without help.
Yep.
right? So he still plays that very great defensive game.
Yeah.
I can't say it's Bergeron level, but he still puts up offensive numbers, again, without relying on guys like Pasternak and Marchand. That's what separates him, and that's where I feel he's a little bit more talented and he stays healthy.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 21?
At 21, I have John Carlson. And again, John Carlson, probably the best offensive defenseman.
In terms of consistency.
In terms of consistency. He's put up points the past 3 years. And I think John Carlson...
He's the best old guy.
Yeah.
Best old offensive defenseman, because we both have guys higher than him that are young guys who have emerged. So at 20, you just had him a bit lower. This is where I have Pietrangelo for all the reasons you said. Great two-way game, a guy you can build around. And imagine, as great as Shay Theodore is, Pietrangelo's better.
Pietrangelo's better.
Right?
Yeah.
There's not much more to say about this guy. He's good in any situation, on any team, the international stage, the NHL. Fantastic talent. Who do you have at 20?
At 20, I have Andrei Vasilevsky. And Andrei Vasilevsky is a guy that I think this speaks to how deep Tampa Bay is, that there are numerous guys on Tampa Bay ahead of him.
Yeah.
And I think
that's a great point. Wow.
You can't get any better than Andrei Vasilevsky in net, and the fact that
not right now.
He's in his prime, and there's not a whole lot you can say. Back-to-back Cup winner there, and is certainly a huge reason for getting them there.
Yeah. So when I mention him, I'm just pretty much going to say his name. I want to get it all out right now. I think Vasilevsky is helped by Tampa Bay, but he helps Tampa Bay.
It's a two-way street.
What you see in Vasilevsky is what Carrie Price would be on a good team.
Yep.
Because he hasn't been worn down yet, right? Although he plays all those games, he doesn't have that crazy workload and that stress Carrie Price does of having to carry a lackluster team.
Yep.
So that's totally great. At 19, this is where I have Jonathan Huberdeau, who offensively has outshined Barkov and has taken over that load, which helps Barkov focus on a defensive game. But what Huberdeau does, he's doing at an elite level. Offensively, he looks like a Patrick Kane, a Artemi Panarin out there, and I think he's going to climb this list as we see more of this. He's already proven he can be consistent, and I think he may even have another level, and I mentioned it in the forward videos. Florida's a team to look out to, a team to look out for, because they almost took out Tampa without Aaron Ekblad. If they can make it work again, they could be the next Tampa.
For sure.
Who do you have at 19?
At 19, I have Braden Point. There's one of the guys that is better than Vasilevsky. And I think there's, we mentioned it in our forward videos, obviously Kutrav is higher than Point. But it's one of those things where I think Point is more consistent than Kutrav. And it also Kucherov's case doesn't help with the fact that he was out for an entire year.
Where the consistency comes is his two-way game.
Yep.
You know every night what you're going to get out of Braden Point, whereas Kucherov, he doesn't necessarily go silent, but when you focus on offense, maybe you get 3 goals one night and then you're quiet for the next 2.
Yeah.
So I totally get what you're saying. So at 18, I have who I feel Boston's MVP is in Brad Marchand. He puts up crazy numbers. He's good on both ends of the ice. And he really excels Bergeron and Pasternak. I mentioned it in the forward videos. Pasternak goes out, they find a way to replace his scoring. Bergeron goes out. Somehow you wouldn't think, but they find a way to replace him. If Marchand goes out, it goes in shambles. So that's why I have Marchand as high as I do. He may even be higher, but all the Boston players are kind of lower than they should be because they have each other to rely on. You haven't seen what they do on their own, whereas other guys are more relied upon, in my opinion. Who do you have at 18?
At 18, I have Mitch Marner.
Yep.
And I think Mitch Marner is one of the elite playmakers in the league. Has certainly helped Austin Matthews achieve his 40-goal season this year. Has certainly helped John Tavares maintain the numbers. Relatively speaking to what he had in New York, there has really been a huge part to a lot of guys in this Leafs forward core here. Mitch Marner, his numbers speak for himself. Speak for itself. He's an elite assist getter here.
Yeah.
He's just an elite playmaker.
One thing I forgot to mention in Mitch Marner is you have John Tavares, who's a franchise player. On most teams, on a lot of teams, he'd be a number one option. Now, you have Matthews, and you expected him to merge at this level. But Mitch Marner has surpassed John Tavares.
Yeah.
I think that speaks volumes to his game.
Exactly.
To pass a number one. So that means, in other words, Mitch Marner is a number one on more teams than John Tavares is.
100%.
Moving on to 17. This is where I have Braden Point for all the reasons you mentioned. I have Vasilevsky ahead of him, which is really our only difference here.
Yeah.
The reason being, it's Andre Vasilevsky. It's kind of tough to decipher who's better between the two. I think it's not as clear cut as having Kucherov and Hedman above them because Vasilevsky on another team, you haven't seen what he would have to do.
Yeah.
But he makes saves like no other. He gets his team into positions like no other.
Yep.
Whereas with Point, it's that two-way game, and you're comparing forwards to goalies.
Yeah.
But he's still explosive. He's fast, and he's so talented. It's tough to choose one or the other, but I have Point lower than Vasilevsky. I have him at 17. Who do you have at 17?
At 17, this is where I have Adam Fox, reigning Norris winner here. Obviously, Adam Fox, like we mentioned, our defensive video came out of nowhere.
Yeah, so you'd want to see this again for him to not only stay in this spot, but to rise.
Yeah.
Because I'm not even sure that he stays where we have him. I don't have him much higher.
Yeah.
But you don't know, right? Because when he came into the league, you weren't sure if he was even going to play in the NHL because like he just seemed so disgruntled. He seemed like a Tony D'Angelo kind of diva.
Yeah.
And even when he came in, okay, you're like, he's a top four offensive D-man. Now he won in Norris. He's elite. So, and he won in Norris before Cale Makar. So it's tough to say what this guy is. As of now, that's, I think, a good spot to have him. At 16, I have John Carlson, who you already mentioned.
Yep.
In terms of veterans, he's, like I said, the most consistent offensively. You know what you're going to get. But it's not a matter of his play diminishing. I just think the young guys have surpassed him, and the cherry on top for him being lower than he should is I think he's approaching a decline. I'm not saying he's there yet. It's more so guys have passed him is why I have him at 16.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 16?
16, I have Jonathan Huberdeau for all the reasons you mentioned. Just a wildly consistent player and is making the guys around him a whole lot better.
Yep. At 15, this is where I have Adam Fox, and we already talked about it. So who do you have at 15?
At 15, I have Patrice Bergeron. And I'll say it now. I think Patrice Bergeron, I kind of disagree with you in the sense that I think Patrice Bergeron is the most valuable player that Boston has. Not necessarily the most skilled player, but he is harder to replace with the fact that he's doing it on both ends of the ice and is very capable offensively and defensively that the other guys on his line, I don't think they can match the defense.
No.
Whereas I think he can't match their offense, but he can come closer to matching their offense than they can to his defense. Not to mention the leadership skills there.
That's a fair point.
That I think Bergeron is the most valuable player in Boston, and I think his defensive game is what pushes him into the top 15.
Yep, and again, the only area where I argue with that is they've done it without him time and time again. They've gotten used to it. And where I argue Marchand to be more valuable is they can't do it. And I argue Marchand not to be better than Pasternak, but more valuable than Pasternak.
Yep.
Because offensively, they always find a way to replace it. It's just Marchand, they've never found that way.
And I agree.
But that's an MVP debate more than a ranking debate.
And I agree, both of them are more valuable than Pasternak. It's easier to replace Pasternak's scoring than it is to replace all the things that Marchand and Bergeron
And to be clear, we've talked about this many times.
Yeah.
You're not going to find one guy, unless it's Austin Matthews. It's not going to be one guy that replaces Pasternak, but like Carolina is trying to replace Hamilton with D'Angelo and Bear, you just need more depth.
Yeah, exactly.
Is essentially what our point is here. At 14, I have Andre Vasilevsky, who I've already fangirled over. Yeah. Who do you have at 14?
At 14, I have Artemi Panarin, and I know he's going to be lower. He was lower in the forwards video. He's going to be
quite a bit lower.
He's going to be lower than where you have him. Just based on where you had him in the forwards video.
Yeah.
And I think Artemi Panarin is one of the best goal scorers in this league. I think there's a little left to be desired on the defensive end. I think that's a main reason why he's lower. And I just think there are guys ahead of him that I think all around are just are just better. Again, it's just picking at hairs at this point when you're talking about the top 15, top 20 guys in the league. There's a lot of guys you can argue to be in that place. You can argue him higher. I don't think you can argue him any lower, but you can certainly argue him higher.
And one point I want to expand on that you mentioned is at this point in the NHL, there are guys we haven't even mentioned, like let's just say Victor Olofsson. There's so many guys in the NHL that can take over a game, and there has to be value on that.
Yeah.
And that's where it's nearly impossible. Like these are just rankings of guys essentially we like or would have on our teams in that order.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we're right or wrong. It's just the flow of the game. At 13, this is where I have Alex Barkov. I think you already mentioned him.
Yeah, I had Barkov actually quite a bit lower at 24. So,
and that's understandable because he's a forward and a first line center. You want to put up points for the most part.
Yeah,
he just doesn't need to do that anymore because Huberdeau takes off that strain.
Yeah,
but you saw 94 points. He can do it. He will do it if he has to.
Yeah,
he just doesn't need to. Defensively, I think he's pushing into that generational Patrice Bergeron echelon. I can't say he's there yet because Patrice Bergeron is just, in my opinion, in his own tier in terms of prime.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 13?
At 13, I have Jack Eichel. And Jack Eichel is a guy that I know you had him lower, but you said he can certainly be higher on this list. He can certainly push very high on this list.
If he's third on my list next year, don't be surprised.
But
same for you.
But it's the whole situation he's in now doesn't help. The injury situation doesn't help. The fact that he's playing in Buffalo hasn't helped.
A lot of uncertainty.
Because I've had him higher on this list before. I really value Eichel.
Both generally have him in the top 10.
For sure.
Anyways, moving on to number 12, I have David Pastrnak, who I think alongside Matthews is the best goal scorer in the NHL. It's going to be between the two of them, like I said in the forward videos. I'm glad they're in the same division to battle it out. What has him lower is just the two-way game, and he plays on a very good Boston line. Who do you have at number 12?
At number 12 is where I have Chris Letang, and he's a lot higher than you have him at. 20
spots higher.
Yeah, and the thing that I value about Chris Letang is the consistency. It's never the problems in Pittsburgh have never been on him. He's been a top 3 point scoring defenseman basically for a long period of time. And you mentioned that they have won a cup without him, but I think the other important thing to mention is they've won 2 cups with him as well.
Yeah, of course.
As I think, there are ways to win without Chris Letang, but there are a lot more ways, or there are a lot more reasons to have him in your lineup because there are a lot more ways that they win with him than without him. So,
where it's not even that I disagree because I think Chris Letang is an incredible talent, but in terms of winning cups, it's obvious. You look at Pittsburgh and any cup winning team, it's depth that wins you cups. So even my point of saying, okay, they won a cup without Chris Letang doesn't mean much because Stamkos or Tampa Bay won a cup without Stamkos. But my point is I guess his importance. So skill-wise, maybe he's up there, but his importance to his team can't be that much. Now, offensively, consistency-wise, great. Defensively, obviously, is why I have him so much lower, and injuries is why I have so much lower. At 11, this is Rahav Yossi, and I don't think you're wrong to have him so much lower. I just personally like Yossi's game. Like, I value it. Because he's so good on both ends. You mentioned his offense, but I think he's better defensively than he is offensively, and that's how he won in Norris over John Carlson, who, in my opinion, had a historic season for this generation of defensemen. John Carlson's a guy who in that season, he paved the way for guys like Hellebuyck and Adam Fox and all these young defensemen rising. But Yossi had a better season that year because he was so good defensively, and he still gets the job done offensively.
For sure.
Who do you have at 11?
You're probably not going to like this, but 11 I have Sidney Crosby. And I think Sidney Crosby he's definitely towards the end of his career. He's not in his prime anymore. And I think, again, it's like Panarin at 14. It's really picking at hairs here. I think guys over recent seasons have put up better performances than Crosby has. But the fact that Crosby, at the age he is, there's a lot of guys that are around him that are certainly lower. As you saw where Ovechkin was on my list, certainly a lot lower. It just speaks wonders to the fact that he can stay within the top 15, in and around the top 10. As you can definitely argue him in the top 10 here, no question, and I know you're about to. But I think Sidney Crosby is just one of those guys that, I think the fact that he's 11 shouldn't take away from the fact that he is still a top 15 player at his age, and he definitely could still rise on this list, which is the crazy thought about it.
Yeah. I'll talk more about him when I get to his pick, which is quite a bit higher.
Yeah.
Now we're in the top 10, and this is where all the fun starts. I had to round out my top 10 with Austin Matthews because he's so talented.
Yeah.
I'll talk about his defense first. It's nothing to write home about, but it's there and it's solid.
Yeah.
But goal scoring, I mean, he has the potential and he has the scoring talent to maybe not get more goals than Ovechkin. But when you talk about Ovechkin, Bossy, and Brett Hull, I think Matthews has that potential to, at the very least, by the end of his career, be number 2.
Yep.
He just has to win a round to climb this list.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 10?
And that's why I have Matthews at 10.
Okay. At 9, I have Patrick Kane.
Okay.
Now, it was tough to rank Kane because he doesn't play much defense. But offensively, he's never failed to make a player beside him better.
Yeah.
And what he did for Chicago, they almost made the playoffs. And had they not sold at the deadline, they could have. But obviously, at some point, they have to rebuild, retool, and beef up for the future. But with the way Patrick Kane plays, I don't think he's ever going to decline. Like, he could go into his 40s and play the same way. Now, he may not be as explosive. He may not put up the same numbers, but he's still going to make players around him better. Because, like I said, I think he is this generation's Wayne Gretzky with his vision, with his passing ability. But he has a better shot than Gretzky did.
Yep.
Who do you have at 9?
At 9, this is where I have David Pastrnak. It's just a dynamic offensive player here.
Yep.
You really can't get a whole lot better than David Pastrnak at offense. And the reason I have him higher than Matthews is Matthews overall may turn out to be a better goal scorer, but David Pastrnak, as of right now, has put up more seasons that Matthews put up this year. So that's why right now I put him over there. But again, Matthews is a guy that will rise up this list.
And Pasternak's obviously more reliable in the playoffs.
Yep.
He has that experience, which is in itself an asset, playoff experience, because these guys are playing to win a cup.
Yeah.
So being good in the regular season at some point shouldn't matter in comparison to what's done in the playoffs.
Yep.
At number 8, this is where I have Cale Makar.
I also have him at number 8.
Yeah, Cale Makar is, in my opinion, the next Erik Karlsson.
Yep.
He hasn't reached prime Erik Karlsson yet because prime Erik Karlsson's its own beast. But the fact that he can and he's showing signs of it is a testament to how good he is now. I don't know how old he is, but he's under 24.
Yeah.
It's just really exciting to think of the future he has and even what he's doing now. He's just so dynamic. Had he played a full season, he may have won the Norris.
Yeah.
The next steps for him to surpass who we have higher in Victor Hedman is defense, like we said in that video. On defenseman is he just needs to beef up there, round himself out, which is tough because he doesn't have the frame of Hedman. He doesn't have that talent yet. And it's Victor Hedman you're comparing him to. He's going to have to bank on a decline, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And to say that alone is why I have him at 8. So at 7, I have Leon Draisaitl. And this is low, I'll admit, because he's done it with and without McDavid in his Art Ross season. But at the end of the day, he's always had good line mates, whether it's McDavid, whether it's Nuge and Yamamoto, which helped him get that Art Ross and that heart. What I need is defense out of him for him to rise on this list. Outside of that, you can't really ask more out of Draisaitl. It's just the guys above him are really good and they're experienced, especially in the playoffs. Who do you have at 7?
At 7, I have Brad Marchand. I think Brad Marchand is the most skilled forward that Boston has right now. Again, like we said before,
that's a fantastic point because I've completely neglected to think of the defensive side of hockey, right? Because Pasternak's obviously more skilled offensively, but Marchand, without a doubt, is easily more skilled defensively than Pasternak is. But go ahead.
No, you pretty much nailed it on the head there with the explanation there. That's why I have him at 7. We talked a lot about the Boston forwards already.
Yes, sir. At 6, I have Artemi Panarin, who you said you had him a lot lower. For me, I look at Panarin, and I mentioned it in the forward video, is that he made, in a way, Patrick Kane what he is today, because Patrick Kane wasn't putting up these numbers until him and Panarin linked up. And since that emergence, he helped Chicago when he was there. Maybe not in playoff success. He helped Columbus when he was there. I mean, he knocked out that 62-win juggernaut in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
He's a great talent offensively. Where I understand you having him lower is defensively. He doesn't provide much, but he makes any team he's on better. Who do you have at 6?
At 6, you mentioned Patrick Kane. This is where I have Patrick Kane.
Yeah.
Wildly consistent over his career. Again, Panarin helped develop his game, and I think another thing that's helped develop his all-around offensive game than just being an elite goal scorer, because we always knew he was going to be that, is the fact that Jonathan Taves didn't play this year.
Yeah.
He went out and made guys like DeBrincat better this year and launched DeBrincat. He wasn't on my list, but launched him onto your top 50 list there.
And if he does it again, he's going to be higher on mine and pretty high on yours.
Because he was already worthy of the number 1 overall pick with his goal-scoring ability before.
Yep.
And I think he's just accelerated his game even more. He's a better offensive player now.
Yep. Definitely. Now we're into the top 5. This is where I have Nikita Kucherov.
Okay.
Now I'm more arguing why I don't have him higher, because he had that historic 136-point season. He came into the playoffs and made Tampa Bay so deadly. Where it is for me is he has a lot of help.
Yeah.
And his defense isn't as strong. Like he's not known for defense. And it's the point factor. Kucherov makes point better. Point makes Kucherov better, which is where you have that little bit of grain of salt in terms of why they're not higher. Who do you have at 5?
At 5, I have Victor Hedman.
Okay.
And Victor Hedman, best defenseman in the NHL right now. Norris winner, 2-time Stanley Cup winner. Great on both ends of the ice. Gets it done offensively. His big body gets it done defensively on the other end. There's not a whole lot of explaining to do Victor Hedman. I know he's a top 5 guy for you. He's certainly a top 5 guy for me. Just one place higher for you.
Yeah, so,
Maybe not one place, sorry.
No,
I jumped the gun.
Yeah, you're right. He is.
We didn't look at each other's list beforehand.
No.
I just kind of assumed based on the last videos that he would be a spot higher for you.
Yeah. Victor Hedman is number 4 for me. Now, it seems you have Kucherov above Hedman.
I do.
Okay, why I have Hedman above Kucherov, and to me the most valuable player in Tampa Bay, is he got their Conn Smythe last year.
Yep.
And had he been healthy, Victor Hedman wasn't healthy, or at least he wasn't 100% these playoffs.
Yeah.
And he did what he did.
Yep.
He probably would have gotten their other Conn Smythe.
For sure.
Where Vaz and Kucherov were in the talks for it is because they were so explosive. But like you said, Hedman's so complete defensively. He's just phenomenal on the offensive end. He can shoot, he can pass. And obviously it helps playing on a very deep and good team, talented team in Tampa. But defensively, he's complete. He's physical. He can skate at 6'6", and he can shut guys down. Like, if you want a perfect defenseman, if you want a mix of Chris Pronger and Nick Lidstrom, like I've said before, you find it in Victor Hedman. Who do you have at 4?
At 4, this is where I have Nikita Kucherov. Again, I like Nikita Kucherov just above Hedman, and I really think I can't say that one of them is more valuable than the other.
No, you can't.
As this is really just skill-wise, and I think Kucherov, if he doesn't come back for the playoffs, is below Hedman. But the fact that he came back for the playoffs after missing an entire season and just he didn't miss a beat. Like, he looked like he was on that 136-point pace that he had a few years back.
Yeah.
That's why I have him as high as as high as he is here at number 4. I just think that he's just, in terms of he just seems to do everything so well.
So this is a question now that it's coming to me. Of course, you have Connor McDavid, but is Nikita Kucherov the best offensive player in the NHL? Is a legitimate question to me.
It is.
Because he's so rounded. Unlike McDavid, he has a shot. He's put up 136 points. Let's say Kucherov played this season. What would he have done in a shortened, offensively heavy season?
Yeah.
Is the question, and I'm glad we're going to get to answer that next season. Going into our top 3, I almost want to spoil yours, but I'll just stick to mine. Sidney Crosby, why I have him so high. And the only thing I disagree with you talking about his career seeming to come to an end, at this point, the only thing I can see ending Crosby's career is injury or him just wanting to not play. Because physically, like, his body's in great condition. And even if the offensive numbers trend down as they have, it seems every season he's getting better defensively. So that's where I feel like Crosby can play forever, because he could be a 3rd or 4th liner. I'm not saying he's going to be your 1st or 2nd line option. Or he's not going to be in your top 6 forever. But that's where I like Crosby, and why I have him at number 3 is because despite his offensive numbers going down, he's great defensively, but he can still lead your team offensively.
Yeah.
Who do you have at 3?
At 3, this is where I have Leon Draisaitl.
Yep.
And I think there certainly is reason to argue some guys ahead of him. But at the same time, too, the numbers don't lie. Ted Lindsay, Art Ross. Like, he,
without McDavid,
2nd highest scorer over the past 3 seasons and beyond, really. So, I think as much as there is certain factors that can kind of diminish numbers, at the same time, numbers are numbers, and he's putting them up. So
the only thing you can ask more of is defense.
His defense, exactly.
Outside of that,
but his offense is just so good that
fantastic. 2, we both got Nathan McKinnon.
Yep.
Explosive, gallops throughout the offensive zone. We talked about it on the forwards list. For him to potentially pass McDavid, which is possible, is defense.
Yep.
And that's how he does it, because he's stronger defensively than our number 1 pick in McDavid. He has a better shot. Yeah, he has to get that cup first. He has the better shot, but why McDavid's ahead is there's never been a talent like him.
Yeah.
You're never going to see a talent like this again. We haven't seen it before. He's so fast. He has decent vision. He has great passing. So skilled, right? Because what do you prefer about McDavid? Do you prefer his speed or his handling? Because I genuinely don't know.
I think his speed is probably the fact that he can it just looks so effortless for him just to blow past defenders.
Yeah.
The way he does that. He doesn't need the puck handling skills that he has, but he still has them. Yeah.
And that's the thing. He goes in tight and he can score, right? Because although he may not have the best shot, he can get his stick in a position nobody else can at the speed he gets it done at. What you have in Connor McDavid is a guy who stick handles like Patrick Kane, but he has, there's no one that has his speed. He's the fastest player in the league. And again, it's tough to put McKinnon at 2 because of what he does in the playoffs. Yeah. But McDavid is just such a beast.
Yeah. Truly a once-in-a-generation talent.
Yep.
And with that, that'll do it for our NHL Top 50 video. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, give it a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of our other uploads. Comment down below what you think of our Top 50, which picks you like, which picks you don't like. Who would be in your top 50? Did we miss anyone? Let us know in the comments below. And with that, thanks again, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.